race for the Golden Boot. Erling Haaland will hope to add to his tally of 36 when City go to play Brighton in midweek. He's got Brentford away next Sunday as well. But what an impact Haaland has made. And what a team. What champions Manchester City are.
Yeah, and you have to love his spirit, his enthusiasm, his desire just to get the next goal. That's all that's on his mind. And there were times when people began to doubt whether he was going to suit this team, but it's all been...
I think they've let us down in any way, shape or form, have they?
No. What a wonderful picture that is. Sean, you can resonate with that in terms of son and parent.
Yeah, it's definitely emotional for him, and it's a proud dad right there. I think his son, I don't think he would have thought his son would have done as well as he has done, but he's come here and he's just shined. Like, he's come from a great place and he's come and made a great place even better for me in my idea.
Well, his dad was always making sure it was nowhere else but Manchester City where he wanted his son to play, but he probably couldn't have dreamt it'd go this way in his first season.
I think you'd think you could anticipate it could go well. I don't think you could have envisioned it could go this well in terms of quantity of goals that he scored, but he got off such a quick start. You know, he's a young lad. He's only going to get better and better. You know, I just think the thing I like him, he doesn't over-celebrate. You know, it's like a business transaction for this guy to score goals, and he wants to get better and better, and he's in the perfect place to break all the records.
Two younger half-sisters there with Erling Haaland. A real family moment for the Haaland family. Let's get some more player reaction. Let's go back to the Etihad with Manish.
Thanks, Steve. Bernardo.
Could yet be 3 trophies for Manchester City come the end of the season. They could complete the treble. They already know, Shay, that they are the champions of the Premier League. They knew that before they kicked off against Chelsea after Arsenal were beaten by Nottingham Forest. And as far as the table is concerned, well, Arsenal then will finish in second place. Newcastle and Manchester United just 1 point away from their remaining games from finishing in the Champions League places. Then it's Liverpool in 5th. Brighton will definitely be playing European football for the first time in their history next season, and they're probably going to finish in 6th. It'll take a massive goal swing for them to finish out of there. And Aston Villa and Tottenham still chasing down European football. Couple of bits and pieces still to be decided at the top of the table. We'll have lots more chat about that in the final 2 Kelly and Righties of the season. With us for this one, Karen Carney and Miguel Delaney. And not here in person, but here in spirit, Righty with the Premier League trophy.
Just to finish the show with. Delivered by one member of the family for the other.
It's not funny. Right. It's not funny. You sure?
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah.
Sean, come and join us. We've got a minute
all the
left.
time.
Hey, look how I'm dressed. I'm just bringing the crowd down.
Come on, see you, mate.
Nice one. Did you see his apron?
Huh?
Nice one, man.
Love it.
Do they keep the same ribbon?
Are you getting used to seeing those ribbons now?
Well, I did say it at the start of the season. We were the show, didn't I?
You did. You also promised you wouldn't rub it in your dad's face, but...
Like Dad said, sometimes when you get it, you have to keep it going. You have to be involved in it. So, yeah.
That's it's such a shame. It's too close. It's too close. I don't like I'm going to have a word with Dolly and all them lot about this because I don't like the way this has worked. I've had so much... My club has given me so much love and fun this season, trying to go for it. But again, you know, we're coming up against a monster in City and they've deserved it with the way they've finished this.
They were, of course, the 2 Premier League winners, father and son combination, Righty with Sean Wright-Phillips there. Great weekend for Manchester City, but sealed before they even kicked a ball.
Yeah, that was the only thing about yesterday. We were going to the stadium yesterday and thinking of if Arsenal had beat Forest today before, it would have been extra special, you know, because there's a bit more to it, a bit more edge on the game. But at the same time, you know, you Man City players take it when they can. And of course, I think at one stage of the season they were 8 points adrift, weren't they, of Arsenal? So there was pressure at a stage, but I think they've won 12 Premier League games on the bounce now. They've shown why they're champions again, and it was a special atmosphere after the game with getting the trophy and all. And you can see the players are talking to John Stones and a few of the lads. John Stones 5 Premier League titles. I spoke to Phil Foden off the camera. 5 Premier League titles. He's 22 years of age. We mentioned the treble at the top of the show. How many trophies these guys are going to win? But it's I think they had a few celebratory drinks last night, should we say, Kelly?
Yeah, I would imagine that now is the time to do it. There's
so.
Just enough time to recover before the FA Cup final, the Champions League final for those City players. But look, as Shay was saying, it's just been relentless between whenever it was, 12 games ago, from being beaten by Tottenham to this run that could end up as a record equalling 14 straight wins to end the season.
It's unbelievable. I don't know what the shift was. Do you know what really pushed them into like sixth gear really and goes, right, we're going to turn the heat up now? And I don't know what it was, because they just absolutely like a train, and no one could stop them, and it's just been remarkable. And to do it season after season, it's 5 out of 6 now, is just unbelievable. And I felt they found the formula, but I thought maybe with the World Cup break it might have given teams another opportunity where that formula might have been broken, because they usually start the season off quite slow and then they get stronger. But I thought maybe this might be the season. I think we were all thinking maybe it is Arsenal's time. But just to turn the heat up, and you mentioned the run there, Shay, it was just incredible. And they haven't done it easy. You know, teams are beating them along the way and you're thinking, OK. But I don't know, it's just Pep Guardiola, isn't it? We could talk about so many things with City, but for me it's about if they didn't have him, they wouldn't be City.
Yeah, and 5 of the last 6 Premier League trophies have been won by Manchester City. And as the guys have been saying, we've seen them do it in different ways. What we haven't seen is them chase in quite the way that they have had to chase this Arsenal side. Yeah, that's it. I mean, the closest is probably 2019 with Liverpool. And Liverpool had a lead for some time. I think it was 7 points at that January game when they beat them 2-1. The ball cleared off the line from John Stones. But never like this. I mean, this was a bit more like, I suppose, their first title, or first Premier League title in 2012, when they hauled in Manchester United. And United actually had a similar, not quite the way what happened to Arsenal, but there was those 3 games. Then they wobbled a bit, gave it back to Manchester United, and then beat them in the run-in. That's exactly it, and that's what's so different about this City, in that it's just been, and I suppose the evolution they've been on since 2012, where at the moment they're unstoppable. I mean, it's not just about all the wins. In that run, in that final 14 games, they've only been behind for 10 minutes. They've been, I think the stat is, they've been 2-0 up or 2 goals clear 50 times more than they've been losing, which is, so the regular state is winning games. And it does feel like City winning at the moment is an inevitability, and that's why people are talking about the treble. We'll talk about that a bit later on, after we've reflected on this season. And you picked out some of the players there. I mean, you look at that squad, and they are they're not quite as young as Arsenal, but it is a very youthful squad with more titles in them. Yeah, well, Haaland they joined last year. Of course, we'll talk about the no number 9 or a false number 9, and we mentioned about maybe they've put the inverted fullbacks, or John Stones has played that role. Karen, you mentioned before, you know, how well he's done that, and Pep always seems to revolve his systems or his team or his squad, because we talk about the great Alex Ferguson over the years. He kept, the team kept changing, the squad kept changing, but they kept winning titles, didn't he? And Karen's right, it's Pep Guardiola. It's that Pep Guardiola effect, as if, like, as you're right, there's a slow start to the season, then the World Cup, then it was like, right, jokes are over now. We need to put the foot to the throttle here. We need to get the title win. We need to, Arsenal were looking brilliant at that stage. Let's not get away. And there's even Ian Wright was talking about it in the studio, saying that this is our year. And to be fair, I think from a Man City point of view, they were very worried, because there's only a gap you can give, and to want to be 3 games to go, we would never have thought that when Arsenal were 8 points clear. So you have to give them great credit for that, the players and the staff. But then you maybe look at the Arsenal side of things. I wouldn't say the word bottle. Did they crumble? Did they, they've got a young, inexperienced team, have not been here before. Has the pressure been too much? Has it got to them? Because looking over your shoulder, there's this juggernaut of a football club and a team and a squad and a manager. They're coming chasing you hard, and it's a difficult one to shake off, I think, perhaps. Yeah, and also they knew that in that second group of fixtures there was the postponed Manchester City fixture, so they had to play City twice, even with that 8-point advantage. So there were always 6 points that could be clawed back by Manchester City at that stage. But in terms of those players coming to form at exactly the right time, that's what's been crucial to them having this run into the end of the season. You mentioned Haaland. And obviously there were questions at the start of the season, seems a long time ago now, about whether or not it would take anything away from Manchester City. Haaland certainly added plenty of his own. But do you think that we've seen at the end of the season, the latter stages of the season, that City have managed to keep everything they had last season and add Haaland to it, rather than maybe a period of adjustment at the beginning? I think, though, Pep did come out in the press at one point and said, I needed more from you.
excuse me, I think he came out and was like, I need him to press more, I need him to come to feet more. It was a bit like, whoa, look at the stats that he's delivering, but he wants more from him. And I do think you're right there, Kelly. I think they adapted him right at the peak at the right time. But I don't think it was plain sailing. Even though he was getting the goals, we were still talking around, it doesn't feel right. He's making runs, they're not finding him. It's still not, like, clicking. But I think he started to click when Stones went and played as a centre-back and then started going into centre midfield. And they started to then kind of also pick his best team at times. I think he was chopping and changing. I don't know whatever that reason is. But part of me also kind of thinks, you mentioned like titles there. And I think why I mentioned about Pep, it's not easy winning titles. Like winning one is like a challenge. But I think the hardest thing is winning back-to-back titles because there's so much pressure on you. And I think getting there, it's fun, it's exciting. But to do it, and that's why I'll go back to Pep, is like, how do you motivate your players to do it season after season? We've seen lots of clips of them doing their inspirational talks. How do you do it? Is it bringing a centre forward and challenge your team? Is it actually dropping or challenging Kyle Walker? You can't play that position. Or is it Stones, I'm going to educate you to play a position that you don't know, that you've never played before? And is it I'm going to scare Arteta, saying you might try what I've done previously because I've effectively coached you, but I'm going to take you to another level? It probably is all of that, but you're right, Kelly, he's just doing it throughout the season to then go, at the end of the World Cup, we're not messing around now, like, we've tried and tested, but we've got to go to another gear now.
I think that is one of the stories that's come out, not so much after the World Cup, but more so after the Forest game, which is the last time they dropped points. The squad got together under Pep and basically said, right, enough is enough. They discussed the whole situation, what was going on, and basically said, we're going to get in gear. And that was also a follow-on just after the World Cup. I mean,
mentality that Manchester City have doesn't happen without him, and we'll focus on that. But just to sort of concentrate on some of the players for a while and the performances that they've put in over the season. Obviously, it's always De Bruyne, but again, not played in every single game this season. He's been used in a way that's allowed him to peak at the right time as well.
Yeah, and I think he's followed with Pep a couple of times as well over the course of the season.
But they've talked about that tension between about how De Bruyne will shout at Guardiola on the training ground.
I think Kevin, to be fair, he plays on the edge a bit as well. I was at the Madrid game during the week when he had a spat back. I was just right in front of where I was sitting, and they both had a bit of a row together, you know. But I think Kevin's that sort of individual. Sometimes he needs a rocket to get the best out of him. But you cannot talk about Man City and not talk about Kevin De Bruyne. He's been absolutely special. And we talk about the link-up play with Haaland being a signing as well. Jack Grealish this year. I mean, there's so many positive, you know, Phil Foden can't get in the team, for example. Mahrez can't get in the team. Bernardo Silva, I thought, you know, was brilliant the other day as well. It's just the quality throughout the team. We talk about John Stones, and rightly so. He's an unsung hero. We talk about maybe Ake, not so much, because there's so many of these superstars. But Ake this year has been brilliant at the back. Ederson, again, has been pretty solid. I don't know. There's a very few weaknesses. And I think if you're going to be Premier League winners, that's what you need, very few weaknesses. But as Karen says, it's the psychology of it all. So they win the league now, and even we'll talk about the treble maybe a bit later, but they've got two massive trophies still to play for. So how does Pep get the psychology of the team? Right, lads, all right, let's enjoy the moment for maybe we had a few drinks last night, but come back down to earth today. Got Brighton on Wednesday, we got Brentford next weekend, but we got Man United the week after in the FA Cup final, and we got Inter Milan in the Champions League final. So how do you get the psychology right? We have to come back down to earth, start from scratch nearly again, and try and be this historic season that they think they can be.
Shay, you know, and De Bruyne, if he wasn't the best player in the Premier League, do you reckon he'd get away with saying that to Pep?
Don't know. If it was Cancelo, he might have got hooked up, I think.
Right, he did.
Sit next to me here.
But yeah.
But he is a special talent. But again, Kaz, it's about man management then. You know what I mean? You have to get the best out of these players, and some people need an arm around their shoulder. And maybe Kevin De Bruyne, to get the best of him, maybe needs a rocket, but Kevin's at boiling point sometimes, and he has a goal back.
The other player who you just mentioned there was Jack Grealish, and the performances that he's put in this season, when it felt last season as though he was struggling to adapt to life at Manchester. There were some good performances in there, but we never saw him quite hit the heights that he's hit this season. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a bit. I mean, I suppose when you're playing under a manager like Guardiola, that's when you speak to people who've played under them, that's one of the things they stress more than anything almost. It's not just about playing your game, it's actually almost learning the game again, because the way he looks at it. And I think with Grealish, it was almost taking it. I mean, I suppose people would have loved Grealish for his individual style, but this is the one thing about Guardiola above anything else is the most kind of the deepest collective in football. And actually, we'll come on to it, I suppose. That was one of the issues, if you can call it that, with Haaland at the start. But initially with Grealish, it feels like, I remember being told that one of the things Pep kept saying to him was,
your job is to draw defenders and create space. And obviously now he's learned that, and once he's perfected that, then it can kind of maybe bring out more of the real Grealish that we've seen.
There was a good clip last week at the Real Madrid game actually, and Real Madrid's second half were getting really into the game, and they were starting to add the pressure, and the ball got released once to Jack Grealish, and Jack actually put his foot on it and just sort of calmed the game down, because they were losing the possession, they were creating some chances, and then he kept it simple. And Pep probably gave a bigger clap for that than any of the goals they scored, because Jack sort of grown into the position, grown into what he wants from what Pep wants from him, you know. And it was like he was like blowing kisses and everything. He was that happy that Jack had that experience and that know-how to go, right, this game's getting a wee bit away from us. Let's just calm it down, keep the ball. But yeah, again, it's the Pep story. You know, it takes a while to sort of get into his side, get his coaching, what he wants from the individual players, and we've seen it before from other players, haven't we?
Yeah, doing exactly the opposite of probably what he's been told at every other stage in his career, from a kid all the way through. But we talked about Manchester City ending the season strongly on a regular basis, and one of the players that always seems to come up clutch at this stage of the season is İlkay Gündoğan, and you caught up with him after yesterday's game. He's making sure that he's ready for that one, İlkay Gündoğan. And, of course, with Pep Guardiola's first signing at Manchester City, and sort of embodies exactly what he wants from that side. Because while players have come and gone in his reign, Gündoğan has been the ever-present. And his pattern of a season, sort of Manchester City's pattern, sort of follows that.
Yeah, phenomenal. I think even Pep said he's a leader when he's, I know he's a captain, but you think he's relatively soft-spoken. That was against Everton, the goal. What a special goal that was. I think I likened it to Dennis Bergkamp in his prime. It was a special goal. But again, I was there 12 months ago when they were 2-0 down to Aston Villa, and he came off the bench and scored 2 massive goals. You talk about the Aguero goal, how sort of famous that is in Manchester City's history, but them 2 goals against Aston Villa, in my opinion, were as famous. And I was going to ask him about it, but he actually answered that yesterday, and I was like, oh, I'm struggling. I think it's harder to ask questions when you're doing some interviews than anything. What I'm going to ask him, and I just felt, just check his arms, see if they're strong enough. Because
I think you spend your whole career trying to find a nice way to answer them, and then you think, God, nobody wants me to now.
2 big titles still left, but he said yesterday before, this is his first time as a captain lifting the Premier League title, you know, so... yeah, he's a special player, yeah.
Were you the last person in the stadium?
Oh, come on.
I was watching at the end. No, I was watching that.
I was about 3 hours after the game.
That's what I was saying. No. Like everybody, the players that didn't seem to want to leave were long after the final whistle had gone, and you certainly didn't want to leave.
Some of the City fans get a bit of stick for being empty.
Oh, no, that's not how I meant it. No.
No, but there was a couple of hours after the game, so they done all the lap of honour and stuff, and then the players come back over and spoke to us and stuff, you know, but... Yeah, it's just amazing when you say 5 times title, and I was like looking at his medal, and he goes, "Have you not got one?" I was like, "No, I've not got one." You want to give me one? I'll give me a spare. As if this was like you can get them on eBay or something. It was just like, yeah.
Do you want one?
You want one? Yeah, I'll take it. İlkay, yeah, but no, he's a brilliant player, and they talk about obviously his contract's up now in the summer as well. I would definitely tie him down if they can keep him there for another couple of years.
Do you think City have a first choice 11 at the moment?
I think they probably do. I think when it comes to the finals, I think the next couple of Premier League games they'll be able to sort of chop and change, and we've even seen that yesterday against Chelsea, chopped and changed a few. But I would say in the both finals, he's got his team, his strongest team in his head already. I don't know what you guys think, but I would...
something that he has done.
No, he said that. No more overthinking. He's promised that already in the Champions League.
Well, it does feel like Haaland actually eliminates that. I mean, again, I suppose we'll come on to it and how he's done it. But I mean, previously, Pep, I mean, one of the things you'd most associate him is the ability to kind of change a team and, you know, different approaches for different games. Whereas now it feels like Haaland's in the team, and obviously De Bruyne then, and everything kind of follows from that. So maybe kind of just clarifies his thinking as well.
Yeah, do you think it feels like there's an 11 there that you could... Because at times, you're right, you would have sat down and while we remember the times where Guardiola made changes and it didn't work out, there were plenty of times where he made the changes and it worked to City's advantage. But there were plenty of times where you'd look at a team sheet and go, how is that quite gonna fit together? Whereas now you could probably reel it off for the 2 finals coming up, as Shay was saying.
They're that good, they don't need to worry about anybody else. I think if they just do what they've been doing with the team, I think Shay's right. I think he knows his 11. If he said tomorrow is the Champions League final, FA Cup final, pick your best team, he could do it. Because I think they're that good. All they got to do is apply themselves and they'll be fine. They start worrying about other things and over tinkering and doing things like that. That's where you cause your own problems, because there's been no evidence along the way. Look at the Real Madrid performance, you know, look at the performances throughout the Premier League. When they've got their main 11, no one stopped them. They're like a train. You can't stop them. And that inner belief and that confidence, which you saw on the pitch yesterday after the game as well, is you just got to enable them to go and do it. And I don't think anyone's going to stop them.
talking about not stopping anyone. I know I've been holding everybody back about talking at length about Pep Guardiola, but that's what we're going to do next. He has changed the game. 11 league titles since 2008 and 2009 with Barcelona, Bayern Munich and Manchester City, way ahead of Max Allegri there as well. I was going to go for the full Massimiliano. But when you look at it, you know, that he has had that incredible success at league title level. And there has been a Guardiola effect. I'm not sure whether that's been over his time at Manchester City or if it goes all the way back to his time at Barcelona.
We just spoke about Gundogan there before the break, and then you hear that little piece there, and he's like, it was just actually an honour to call him my manager, because that's what he is in football, in world football. Players from all around the world want to play for this guy, because in my opinion, he's a genius. He thinks, sleeps, breathes and eats football, and the messages that these players receive on a daily basis, he just, repetition, he drills it into them. And everyone knows exactly what he wants from them. And it helps when you've got a brilliant team with brilliant players and individual qualities and stuff as well. But he strikes me as the kind of character who you want to play for as a player. You'd love to play for Pep Guardiola. You'd love to be part of his team, how he plays, the way they play, the way they entertain, the way they create chances, the way they score goals, the way they dominate teams with the ball, but also with chances. And they entertain. You know, talk about maybe the Newcastle back in the day, the entertainers. These guys are the modern day entertainers, and Pep at the helm of that is just so special.
I think he's changed it, because when I used to watch like the Premier League, I think a lot of managers, not criticising them, would put out a team to win a game of football. I think he coaches his players, and I think this season's shown that Pep, Arteta, Howe coach their players, bring the best out of them, and have outperformed everybody really, and surpassed some of our expectations. But I think him, like, I look at his team and like he makes every player better. He changes his system. He's a coach. I don't know about his man management or player management, but even go back to when I played, I don't think a coach ever really, or a manager made me better. We went out to get results, and like never really probably made me better or challenged me, because you inherit a player and you think, right, this player will do me a role. This is what I want you to do. But I always look at his teams and I think, like, look at John Stones. He's never played that position. He can't just say, go and do it. He's got to sit down with him, coach him, educate him, make him do that role. I think he's just the ultimate coach, and it goes from Barcelona with the false nine to Philipp Lahm at Bayern Munich to Stones or Haaland or Grealish. He's like, always makes his players better, and I think that's what's changed our game here in the Premier League, that it's not about putting a team out to get results. He coaches them to make them better. And to watch us, even the goalkeeping thing that you mentioned earlier, Shay, what were you saying about goalkeepers?
Yeah, I think since 2016 and the Premier Leagues in general, they're playing out with goalkeepers in general in all the clubs who play a lot more from the back and keep possession and ball retention. But who joined the Premier League in 2016 was Pep Guardiola. He's rejuvenated the whole league.
Bravo, didn't work, and then Ederson was...
But I mean, like other managers, other coaches and everyone around the world looks at this as the sort of pinnacle of how to play football.
That's exactly it. I was about to say, I mean, it's not just obviously playing it from the back in terms of your whole team. It's about changing goalkeepers. The fact that now being good with the ball at your feet is now key, and that all comes from Guardiola. And it's not just a Premier League level. Like, I think it was Arrigo Sacchi that said it. I mean, he was obviously an influence on Pep and someone considered in the same terms that in football history now there's a before Pep and an after Pep and how it's played. I think that, I mean, because it's not just the Premier League in terms of playing out from the back. You see it like right through the divisions, and even the way kind of like kids are coached now. It all comes, and that's I suppose an influence that goes beyond winning trophies.
I think that it's an interesting point about the fact that it's just about the intensity of the coaching and the focus on individual players, but also in terms of style, as you're saying, it's affected goalkeepers. And there was a while when everybody wanted to play like Barcelona, but even Pep Guardiola himself has moved on from that style of play, and he hated that tiki-taka term because he was like, that's not what we do. That's what people who are trying to copy us do and don't do it as well.
Yeah, because it was too passive, basically. Where it's all about intensity and pressing. And even, I suppose, look across the road from City, the issues that Man United are having now, where there's this big debate about De Gea, and that all comes because they don't think he's as good with his feet, and that all comes, of course, from what Guardiola's done to football.
Yeah, going back even to Pep there about that, you know, he's talking about 5 seconds in his head, things happened before. We look at probably the biggest game of the season was when Arsenal came to the Etihad. It was so close in the title race, wasn't it? And Arteta knows Pep inside out. He was there for 3 years as assistant, so he knew exactly. And Arsenal pressed them high. What did they do? They skipped over the press, hit Haaland, and they played out of it. Like, he's a step ahead of every manager or coach, it seems, because he knows Arteta as well, Pep, doesn't he? He thinks he's going to press them. he's just one step ahead of the rest.
Well, I mean, we were talking about it off air earlier, and you brought up when he spoke to Kasparov, Shay. But you do wonder, I mean, does anyone think about how football actually, the mechanics of it, to the level that Guardiola does? This is why people call him a genius, because obviously it's some sort of spatial awareness or how it moves. But evidently, he's just able to. He's got this depth of thinking for it.
So you're talking about Kasparov, the chess master, the grandmaster, who is, and that idea of it being you're trying to anticipate your opponent's next move, and you have several options when they make whatever it is their move is going to be.
The thing is, and I think yesterday was a good example. You're playing against Chelsea, who've spent so much money, and yet can't play out from the back. They had no playbook. They had no chess moves in essence, and you're like, but City have an answer to everything. Okay, if we get high press, we skip the link. If you stand off us, we'll play. We'll suck you on. We've got to do what we've got to do. We overload in your wide areas. So like, every problem that you throw at us, we've got a solution, and we've already seen it before. And you're right, he's just so good at that. But I think it was just really interesting against a team that spent so much money, but just absolutely nowhere near him. You still, even when you spend money, you still need a top quality coach to help you get to the next level.
And you need to spend the right money as well. You need to have good player acquisition, and that's something that's been set up at the club since before Guardiola came in.
This is the other thing about the whole project as well. I mean, everything was, even before Guardiola came, they're basically, because they knew he was the best, they're planning for him, so everything was built to his specifics. And I suppose you can see the effect of that now.
With everything that he has achieved, with changing the way that football is played, from his time at Barcelona through to his time now at Manchester City, where there are still those innovations that we're seeing other teams sort of put onto the pitch at various stages. What does he need to do now to be considered in the same bracket as, say, Sir Alex Ferguson? Is he there yet?
Well, he can do it the next couple of weeks, Kelly. We're talking about the treble, aren't we, this season? And we're talking about the 99 team. Man United obviously won the treble in 99, and they obviously were a phenomenal team, individually and collectively. And at the helm of that was Sir Alex Ferguson, one of the best managers of all time that's ever graced the Premier League, isn't it? Let's be honest. So I think Pep was brought to the football club to win the Champions League. He'll say that the Premier League is the most important thing, and that's what he comes every season to get to. But Sheikh Mansour and Khaldoon, who was there yesterday, will be like, no, this is why we brought you to the Premier League. We brought you to the Premier League to win the Champions League. And if he does that, it's only a couple of weeks away, let's be honest. Man United in the FA Cup final, and of course Inter Milan in the Champions League final. If he does that, he talks about legacy, Pep Guardiola. He'll have a legacy in this country for a long, long time, and rightly so. You mentioned the word genius. I think he is. He's a football genius, and everything he does, it seems, turns to gold. Apart from the Chelsea game, which we spoke about, the final in Porto a few years back, where he tried to over-tinker it. But I think we all agree. I think he's got a set 11 now that'll probably start against Inter Milan, and if they can play to their maximum, then I think they'll get the job done.
Yeah, and now that the title is sewn up, Pep Guardiola is talking about the treble.
I've been so demanding this period, and now I had the feeling, okay, we leave the trophy. Now and now thinking go to Brighton is so exhausted, because I know how difficult they are, and you have to lift, and the player has to celebrate it. Otherwise, there's no sense. But at the same time, I don't think we'll arrive with time to rest mentally the two finals against United and Inter de Milan. But we have to play 2 more games, and you have to try to be ready. So I said enjoy, but guys, be careful, because still we are there, and it will be a pity if you are distract what we have, these competitions ahead of us.
He's right. The thing that they have in their favour now is a gap between that game against Brighton and the FA Cup final, then a gap again to the Champions League final. And at the end of this season, when they are on that run, that could go either way. They've been in such a role midweek, weekend, and everything's been going perfectly for them. You just wonder if maybe that's the one time. Look, I'm throwing a bit of jeopardy in here to try and make a conversation.
Don't do it, Kelly, don't do it.
No, but it feels inevitable that City are going to go on and get the treble. But if there was one tiny thing, it could just be that rhythm maybe being lost.
For me personally, obviously, they would have celebrated yesterday the title, and they would have celebrated last night. Let's not get away from it. They would have had a few beers last night after the game, and the euphoria of winning a Premier League title, and we mentioned some of the players 5 times. The feeling doesn't change. It's still an unbelievable, feeling for these players. So the ecstasy of that, and then they have to come in today for warm downs and prepare for Brighton again. I'll be surprised if he goes full strength against Brighton. I think maybe the next weekend's Brentford in the last game of the season. I think you'll probably see more the final team against against Brentford and maybe make a few changes. I don't know what you guys think, but make a few changes midweek again.
It does feel like that, doesn't it? That he'll maybe give them a rest in midweek and then use Brentford as kind of to keep them in the right rhythm, as you said, for the final. Because I mean, if it's 2 weeks without your first team playing, that's almost a bit too long.
Well, what did you want as a player?
I wanted to party, Kelly. I've just spent how many months doing well. I wanted to have a little bit of a party, but with that, though, you're right. You can't take away the players celebrating, but equally, when you celebrate and you've got a game, the probability of picking those players, because you've got to let them have a good time, because that's why you play football, but then you don't want to increase the injury rates. So he's got to be really careful, but equally I'd look at it and go, which one suits my game plan? Does Brentford or Brighton replicate Inter or Man United? And I've got to prepare for that. So actually being a bit tactical about which team plays where and when. So I actually thought, personally, I was looking at it, I'd have gone stronger against Brighton.
Okay.
Because I think, he mentioned it there, but if he's looking in the eyes of his players and they're tired, he can't do that because he can't have broken players. So I think he'll have to just go, who's fit, who's fresh, who can I rely on? But I think if he had the choice, I think he'd go stronger for Brighton because I think they'd tactically be more problem for him. But it'd be interesting.
Who's the closest to Inter, I suppose? Well, maybe Man United in the way that game will set up in the final.
But I think that's what you'd probably, as a manager, go in, scratching a back to the chess thing. What problem? How would I overcome it? And which game would prepare me better for it? But the ultimate stands to the freshness of your players.
Yeah. Do we think Manchester City are going to go on and win the treble?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's any doubts in anybody's mind at all?
Even in the final.
FA Cup final.
Really? You think that'll be the harder of the two games?
Yeah. It's like, at any point, do you think Man United want to make them become treble winners? Or
what Ten Hag said after the League Cup, after they qualified for the final, when he was specifically asked, all the supporters care about stopping the treble. We will give 100%. They can.
Yeah, so that message is received.
I think it's the first time they played in the final as well, in the FA Cup final together, which is crazy. I think of the history of both clubs, and again, they've got that added thing. So if we're here next season talking about this, is like, they missed out, and Man United stopped them being the same team as the treble team in '99. They've got that extra motivation, Man United, haven't they? But I think personally, I think if Man City play to their high standards towards the end of the season, they'll do both finals.
It happened in '77 actually. Liverpool were going for the treble, and United beat Liverpool in the FA Cup final. Liverpool won the other two.
I was only one then. I know I don't know, but too young for me. That.
We need to talk about Arsenal as well, just to kind of wrap up this sort of title chat, because they're the ones who have made Manchester City go and attempt to win their last 14 games of the season. They've done it with these previous 12 games. But Arsenal have allowed them back into this race. There were the 3 games that they drew back-to-back, having gone from 8 points clear on the 7th of April, plus the 2 games against Manchester City that they've lost since the turn of the year. You can point to the periods where Arsenal have had a dip and they just hadn't given themselves enough breathing space to kind of hold off the challenge of Manchester City.
Yeah, I actually looked into it as the 2 months where the first month, I think it was March, they played every three days, Arsenal, and it actually suited them. And I actually think it was less thinking time, play a game similar to City. And the following month, I think they had more rest time, where they dropped they had 2 gold leads and they dropped it. I was thinking that was at your detriment, where they had more recovery
West Ham,
time.
Southampton.
Yeah, they had more recovery time to think about it. And I think it was at their detriment, where where you're thinking, you go in the training ground, you're like, how did we drop that 2-0 lead? Oh, we're out of it. Oh, we've got another one coming. And then we play City. And I think it got a little bit too much there for them. But what I would say is if you flipped Arsenal's season and they started off poorly and ended the season like a Liverpool have done.
50 points in the first half of the season.
Would we be saying like now, they're like some of the... I don't think we would. I think they're a young team with Arteta.
Yeah.
I think they've done really well, personally.
I'd agree. It reminds me actually of Tottenham, and Arsenal fans won't like that, but Tottenham under Pochettino in 2016, where they had that first really good season under him. Then were kind of in a title race without realising, which is, I suppose, different to Arsenal. Lost it to Leicester and then just collapsed a bit. They got hammered at Newcastle. They were beaten in another game. Actually, Arsenal finished ahead of them. But then the next season, they came back and got 86 points. And I'm not saying the same will happen, but the potential's there.
So any team that has had an 8-point lead and not won the title has won it again the next season in the Premier League. I just wonder, I think teams are being asked to do different things now to win the title because of Manchester City. I wonder, from your perspective, if you think that we could see a hangover for Arsenal at the start of next season, kind of similar to what we've seen from Liverpool this time around, from the really intense season that they had last time round.
Yeah, but I think Liverpool played like 60-odd plus games. Arsenal haven't done that yet, really, I don't think.
But I mean, even the psychological effect of it, because there isn't, like you said at times,
yeah,
we're not like going to be talking about Arsenal bottling it, but definitely it looks as though the
just say it, Kelly. Righty's not here today. You got me. Say it if you want.
Because it's not what I'm trying to talk about. It's like genuine emotional toll and exhaustion.
Depends who they
the players
bring in.
hit a wall
if they get a good recruitment phase in, that will be they've got this far. The bottom line is they need players to get them to the next level. So who is that and what does that look like?
I think Arteta said as well, you got to go through the pain of this season. A bit like Man City players in the semi-final last year, they lost to Real Madrid. And they used that pain this year against Real Madrid. Yeah. We're going to show them we are this team. Arteta's got to use it for this. He calls it a journey they're going through. Yeah. A painful journey because they've lost out. But at the same time, as Karen says, if they recruit right in the summer, it could be the making of them maybe next season. But again, they've got to topple Man City, of course.
It used to be the old truth of football. They have to go through it once before you actually win it. And like happened to United in '92, happened to Liverpool in 2019. So, I mean, maybe similar can happen here.
Yeah. Do you think it will?
I think Arsenal, I think they want about 4 players in the summer, including Declan Rice, as we all know about. And I do think they'll pick up, but I suppose, they need the break of a summer maybe to cleanse themselves a bit of what's just happened.
They had heartbreak last year, though.
In terms of
Champions League,
and they used it to fuel the improvement this time around. And maybe a couple of players over the summer, and Arsenal fans can start to feel a little more.
Dream again.
I'd just like to go into the break leaving everybody happy. That's all it is.
Righty,
and yes, exactly. We'll have to send a little clip to Righty to keep him smiling.